In a town where smoke from the chemical plant hangs heavier than justice, 17-year-old Cindy McKinney becomes the face of a tragedy no one wants to talk about. After a routine encounter with police turns into a horrifying act of violence, her quiet world erupts into a storm of lawsuits, secrets, and long-buried rage. As her mother Danielle, a former public defender, refuses to back down, the courtroom becomes their only battleground in a town built on silence. But when power protects itself and truth threatens to burn everything down, one family's pain could ignite a national reckoning. What happens when a mother decides she'd rather burn down the system than let it destroy her child? Cindy McKinney didn't flinch when the chemical sting hit the back of her throat. That meant it was a regular day. Her gloved hands moved slow and steady across the conveyor belt, sorting plastics that reeked of ammonia and burnt rubber. The mask over her face itched, but she didn't adjust it. If the foreman saw her touch it again, he'd write her up. That was already 2 this month. 12 hours in that plant didn't make you strong, it made you numb. Her chair hummed softly as she pushed herself down the cracked sidewalk toward home, one wheel slightly wobbling from the pothole she hit last week. She hadn't told her mother. Danielle would try to fix it, and right now, Danielle didn't need another thing to worry about. Eastgate wasn't a town people talked about unless something exploded or burned down. Cindy couldn't remember the last time the local news reported anything good from their side of the highway. The other side, with its coffee shops and clean air and sidewalks that didn't crumble under your tires, that was for the people who locked their car doors when they crossed into her zip code. She rolled past a row of homes that leaned like tired bones, their shutters askew and yards swallowed by wild grass. Mr. Landry waved from his porch, coughing hard into a napkin. He smiled through it. Everyone did. That was the unspoken deal in Eastgate. You smiled, you nodded, and you kept your mouth shut. Cindy's arms ached, not from the shift, but from the raw patches the gloves left behind. Her sleeves covered most of it. She didn't want the neighbors asking questions, and she didn't want her mom calling the plant again. The last time Danielle made noise, Cindy got pulled from the safety team and reassigned to light sorting, which somehow meant dragging barrels twice her weight to the loading dock. The house sat near the chain-link fence at the edge of the neighborhood. Its paint was peeling, and the porch had a lean, but it was home. Danielle had bought it when Cindy was 9, back when she still practiced law downtown, before the layoffs, before the asthma, before the water started turning strange colors in the tub. Danielle was on the porch when Cindy rolled up, a glass of something cold sweating in her hand. Her eyes scanned Cindy like she always did, not with suspicion, but with the sharp, quiet panic of a mother who'd learned to read pain that didn't show. "How's the hand?" she asked. Cindy kept her voice even. "Worse than yesterday. Better than tomorrow." Danielle didn't smile. "I'll look at it tonight." Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and steam. The TV murmured low in the background, some rerun courtroom drama her mom pretended not to watch. Cindy pulled herself onto the couch and exhaled. It wasn't comfort, exactly, but it was safety. "You eat yet?" Danielle asked from the kitchen. No. Danielle opened the fridge, pulled out leftover greens and cornbread, and warmed them in silence. She didn't ask about the plant. She never did. Not anymore. Cindy had just started to relax when the squeal of tires outside cut through the quiet. Her spine straightened. Danielle moved to the window. 2 police cruisers rolled slow past the street, their lights off but their presence loud. Cindy's hands gripped the edge of her seat. One car stopped. And then backed up. Danielle muttered, "Not again," under her breath. The cruiser halted in front of their house. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Officer Travis Dean. Travis Dean had been patrolling Eastgate for over a decade. No badge cam, no accountability, and no kindness. He was the kind of man who smiled when he scared people. Danielle stepped off the porch. Cindy stayed inside, watching from behind the screen door. Dean's boots crunched gravel as he approached. "Evenin', counselor," he said, voice soaked in mockery. Danielle didn't blink. "You're not welcome here." "Good thing the road's public," Dean said, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Got a call about suspicious movement. Figured I'd check in." "No one called you." "Well," Dean said, shifting his belt, "you know how it is. Noise, complaints, wrong zip code." Cindy moved closer to the door. Danielle's shoulders tensed. Dean saw the movement. His eyes slid past Danielle and landed on Cindy. He tilted his head. "Well, there she is, our little neighborhood hero." "How's work treatin' you, sweetheart?" he said, loud enough for the block to hear. Cindy didn't answer. She'd seen what happened to folks who talked back. Dean took a step forward. Danielle blocked his path. "You don't speak to my daughter." He smiled, pulling something from his vest. A small spray bottle. "Got some new tech for residue testing," he said. "Mind if I demo it?" "Just a little spritz. Won't hurt. Much." Danielle's voice dropped, sharp. "That better not touch her." Dean shrugged, like this was a joke. "Standard procedure, safety check, you understand." Without warning, he flicked the cap off and aimed it towards Cindy. It happened fast. Cindy raised her arm to block it, but the liquid hit her forearm. Clear, odorless, and then it wasn't. The pain came like a scream without sound. She gasped, crumpling onto the porch as the burning tore through skin like it wasn't there. Danielle rushed to her, grabbing a towel, but the damage was already spreading. "What did you do?" she screamed. Dean backed away, casual as ever. "Must be a reaction. Maybe something on her skin. You know how sensitive they can be." And then he left. Just like that. No ambulance. No apology. No accountability. The cruiser's tires chewed gravel as it rolled away, disappearing into the haze. Danielle cradled Cindy's arm, her own hands shaking. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She watched the red rise to the surface of her daughter's skin and memorized every detail. Inside, she laid Cindy down on the couch and ran cool compresses over the burn. Cindy trembled, not from the pain anymore, but from the fear of what would happen next. "I'm okay," she whispered. "No, you're not," Danielle said. The silence hung like smoke. Then Danielle stood. She went into the back room and opened the filing cabinet. It hadn't been touched in years, not since she quit her firm, not since she buried the last case that didn't make it past pretrial. She pulled out the box marked Federal. Cindy heard it from the other room, the scrape of metal, the soft click of folders. When Danielle returned, her face was calm, but her hands were ready for war. "I want you to rest," she said softly. Cindy looked up. "What are you going to do?" Danielle knelt beside her and kissed her forehead. Burned every name they tried to hide behind. And for the first time that day, Cindy felt the air shift. Well, not cleaner, not safer, but louder. Danielle didn't wait for permission. She picked up the phone. The pain kept Cindy awake most of the night. It throbbed like a drumbeat under her skin, hot and deep and wrong. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, Officer Travis Dean's smirk as the liquid hit her arm, as if it were a game. Danielle changed the compresses twice, murmuring quietly, her voice tight with focus. She didn't say much. Cindy didn't ask. By dawn, the skin on her arm was blistered and raw, a map of someone else's cruelty drawn across her body. She hadn't cried, not when it happened, not when they rinsed it off, not when Danielle wrapped it in gauze. But now, as the sky turned from gray to bruised orange, she stared at the ceiling and felt something colder than fear seep into her chest. She didn't feel safe in her own house anymore. Not when someone could show up, smile, and ruin you and walk away like nothing happened. Danielle was already up. She hadn't slept. Her laptop glowed from the dining table, a mess of tabs and folders open, legal code, case files, police misconduct databases, civil suits, medical injury precedents. The printer whirred every few minutes, spitting out paperwork that landed in neat piles like evidence on a courtroom bench. She moved with the same rhythm she had when Cindy was a child and ran a fever. Quiet, focused, ruthless in her care. But this was different. This wasn't illness. This was assault. Cindy watched her from the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes heavy. "What are you doing?" she asked finally. Her voice was hoarse. Danielle didn't look up. "Building the wall." "What wall?" "The one I'm going to smash them against." There were moments when Danielle didn't sound like a mother. She sounded like something older, sharper. Cindy remembered how her mother used to speak to judges and prosecutors, back when she worked downtown. Clean, calm, dangerous. That voice was back now. "He's not going to be held accountable," Cindy said quietly. "They never are." Danielle turned, her eyes sharp. "That's what they count on." The doorbell rang just before 8 a.m. Cindy flinched. Danielle didn't. She walked straight to the door and opened it without hesitation. Rachel Monroe stood on the porch, her blonde hair tied in a messy braid, a phone in one hand, a bag of muffins in the other. "Is he okay?" Danielle stepped aside. Rachel slipped in and crouched by Cindy. "Jesus," she whispered when she saw the bandages. "I'm fine," Cindy muttered. "No, you're not," Rachel said. "And I got it on video." Danielle's head snapped up. "What?" "I was across the street," Rachel said, standing, "walking to my cousin's. I saw him stop. I thought something was off, so I recorded it." She pulled up the clip. The screen showed Officer Dean stepping from the cruiser, laughing. Danielle leaned in. There was no audio, but the image was clear. The bottle, the spray, Cindy's reaction, Dean walking away. "I emailed it to myself," Rachel said. "Posted it too, on TikTok. It's already at 30,000 views." Danielle's mouth tightened. "Take it down." "What? Why?" "They'll come after you." Rachel hesitated. "Then they'll come." "But people saw it. People are talking." Danielle looked at her, then nodded once. "You need to stay close to your parents. Don't go out alone." Rachel nodded. Her face was pale but determined. Danielle returned to the table. Her laptop screen flickered with an open complaint form for the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. "They won't just come after her," Cindy said softly. "They'll come after us too." Danielle didn't answer. An hour later, the police came, not to arrest Dean, but to check on a report of unrest. 2 cruisers, 4 officers. Cindy watched from the window. "Stay inside," Danielle told her. She stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. Cindy couldn't hear what they said, but she saw the tension in their shoulders, the tight lips, the forced smiles, the pretend politeness. Danielle handed them something. Papers, likely copies of the video and the complaint she'd drafted. One officer glanced down at it and then up at her with a look of quiet warning. Danielle never flinched. They left after 6 minutes. The real war started that afternoon. The plant called. Cindy was suspended, pending review. Danielle didn't respond. She just took the letter and added it to the pile. That night, their neighbor across the street, Mr. Halverson, turned on his floodlight and left it aimed at their front door. No reason, no comment. 2 houses down, someone spray-painted "Instigator" across their mailbox. Cindy didn't say a word. She just stared at it and went back inside. Danielle stayed up filing the lawsuit until 2 a.m. The case would name the Eastgate Police Department Officer Travis Dean and the Eastgate Industrial Corporation, whose chemicals she believed were illegally mixed into police testing solutions to skirt federal cost limits. Cindy hadn't known that part. They're working together? Danielle nodded. Contracts, backdoor deals, partnerships. They keep off paper. Do you know? Danielle looked up, tired but certain. Because I helped build one once. A long time ago. For a firm that taught me how this game works. By the third day, the burn on Cindy's arm was scabbing over, but the scar it left behind was shaped like a map of something broken. That morning, they drove to a clinic 2 towns over. The doctor, a friend of Danielle's from law school, documented everything. Photographed it, measured it, logged it into a sworn affidavit, estimated. She'll need grafting, he said gently, and therapy. Danielle nodded. We'll make them pay for both. As they left the clinic, Cindy asked, Why are you doing all this? Danielle didn't speak for a while. Then, because when you were born, I promised you'd never be invisible. The ride home was quiet. That night, the protest began. It wasn't big, just Rachel and 5 other kids from school. They stood on the corner with handmade signs. Justice for Cindy. We saw the tape. Spraying a child isn't protocol. Cars honked, some threw cups. One man yelled for them to go back to the projects, even though Eastgate didn't have any. Danielle watched from the porch, arms crossed. They'll hate us more after this, Cindy said. They already hated us, Danielle replied. Now they just can't pretend they don't. That same night, Dean gave an interview on a local podcast. Said Cindy had behaved erratically and he'd followed procedure. Said he was the real victim of cancel culture. The host laughed and called Danielle a radical. Danielle replayed the audio with the same expression she wore in court. Time to file the motion, she said. By week's end, Danielle had filed a 97-page federal lawsuit, complete with exhibits, evidence, expert opinions, and the video. The media picked it up next. Not the big networks, just the online watchdogs, the kinds of outlets that dig deep enough to find rot. Rachel's video had hit 500,000 views. An online forum tracked down Dean's previous complaints, sealed, settled, buried. Someone leaked a police report showing another teenager 4 years ago had similar burns. She had moved away. No charges were filed. Danielle printed that too. Cindy sat on the porch that night, bandaged, exhausted, watching the street. Do you think it'll work? She asked. Danielle didn't answer immediately. She came and sat beside her, the air between them thick with what had been done and what had yet to come. I don't know, she finally said. But I'll make sure the world has to see you before it looks away again. It started with a letter. Not an official one. No signature, no seal. Just a piece of printer paper, folded 3 times, left wedged between their front door and the screen. Danielle spotted it first, her hands full of grocery bags. She didn't read it on the porch. She brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it like it was something still breathing. Cindy watched her from the hallway. What is it? Danielle didn't speak. She unfolded the letter with a careful precision, like she was disarming a bomb. The words were typed, spaced unevenly, probably from an old machine or a discount printer. It read, Drop the case. You're making trouble. Eastgate forgets easy. Don't make us remember. There was no name, no logo, just the smell of someone else's cowardice. Danielle folded it again and slipped it into a manila folder already stuffed with similar threats. Voicemails, screenshots, private messages. She wasn't saving them because she was scared. She was saving them for discovery. Cindy sat down slowly at the table, her bandaged arm resting on the wood. They're trying to scare you. They're trying to scare you, Danielle said, her voice low and even. They think hurting me will make me stop. But this isn't about me. They don't see it that way. Danielle looked at her daughter for a long moment. That's because they've only seen women like me in court when we're defending ourselves, not when we're coming for blood. Across town, Rachel Monroe had her own problems. Someone had slashed the tires on her mother's car. Not all four, just two. Enough to make a point without enough damage for police to care. Her older brother found a dead squirrel nailed to their mailbox. Rachel posted about it. "This is what happens when you tell the truth in Eastgate," she wrote. The post went viral again. Danielle asked her to stop posting, just for a while. Let the lawyers take the wheel. But Rachel wasn't built for silence. "They want me quiet so they can twist the story," she said. "So they can say Cindy was angry, or unstable, or lying." "You've already helped more than enough," Danielle replied. Rachel leaned forward, fire in her eyes. "I'm not doing this for Cindy. I'm doing it because I live here too." The mayor finally made a statement. 2 weeks late, 34 seconds long. "We are aware of the situation involving Officer Travis Dean and the McKinney family. The incident is under review, and we ask for the community's patience while we assess the facts. No apology, no suspension, no action." The police department issued a nearly identical press release. It included one new detail. Officer Dean was being reassigned to administrative duty pending outcome of internal review. Danielle read the line 3 times. "They're protecting him." Cindy looked away. "They always do." It wasn't just silence anymore. It was the kind that screams behind locked doors. That weekend, Danielle was invited to speak at a town hall hosted by a civil rights nonprofit from the city. The event was held in an old church gymnasium off Route 5. Folding chairs, a low ceiling, a microphone that hissed every time someone breathed too close to it. Danielle brought Cindy with her. Cindy didn't want to go, but her mother insisted. "Let them see what they tried to destroy," Danielle said. "Let them see who's still standing." Cindy wore a long-sleeved shirt to cover the scar, but the tension in her face told more truth than skin ever could. The room was full. Not just locals, but people from neighboring towns. Teachers, nurses, small business owners, students. A few cameras in the back. Not mainstream press. Independent outlets. People with cell phones and YouTube channels. Danielle stood behind the mic. She didn't read from notes, she didn't raise her voice, but every word landed like a strike. "My daughter was sprayed with a corrosive substance by a police officer under the guise of routine procedure," she said. "It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an overstep. It was violence, carried out with the knowledge that no one in power would do a damn thing about it." The room went still. "And when we filed our complaint, when we followed the rules they said we were supposed to follow, what did they do? They mocked us, they threatened us, they vandalized our home, and now they tell us to wait." Her eyes swept the room. "We're done waiting." When it was over, people clapped. Not politely, not nervously. They clapped like someone had finally said out loud what they'd all swallowed for too long. A woman approached them after the speech. Mid-40s, faded lipstick. Her hands trembled as she introduced herself. "My name's Beth. My son was pulled over by Officer Dean last year. Nothing happened, but he made him get out. Pushed him onto the pavement. My son's autistic. He didn't understand what was going on. He peed himself. They didn't care. They never filed a report." Danielle took her statement down. Another name, another piece of a puzzle that had always been scattered but was finally coming into focus. Cindy didn't speak the whole drive home. When they reached the house, there was another note, this time on their windshield. "You're not a hero. You're a target." Danielle didn't flinch. She just put the car in park and crumpled the paper in her fist. That night, she met with a federal attorney via Zoom, a former colleague from law school who now worked in civil rights litigation in D.C. "They'll try to bury you in delay," the attorney warned. "Motion after motion, obstruction, jury pool tainting. You'll need more than evidence. You'll need attention." Danielle nodded. We have both. We'll go after Cindy. I know. The attorney paused. Are you sure she's ready for that? Danielle glanced at the hallway where Cindy stood, half out of sight, listening. She doesn't have a choice, Danielle said quietly. None of us do. The next morning the doorbell rang. A man in a crisp gray suit stood outside, holding a white envelope. Ms. McKinney, you've been served. The police union was filing a defamation lawsuit against Danielle and Cindy. Cindy stared at the envelope in Danielle's hands. They're suing us. They're trying to shut us up, Danielle said, tearing it open. They just gave us what we needed. Oh, Danielle held up the papers. Now we get discovery. Now they have to give us everything. Later that day, Cindy logged into school online. Her inbox was full of messages. Some were supportive. Some were vile. One read, "You're lucky all you got was acid." She didn't show her mom that one. She just closed the laptop and walked outside, into the sun that barely touched Eastgate's cracked sidewalks. Rachel met her by the corner. Together they walked, quiet at first. Then Rachel asked, "Why do you think people hate seeing us fight back so much?" Cindy thought about it, about her skin, about her silence, about how people smiled at her when she smiled, but hated her when she dared to speak. Because we were never supposed to believe we had the right, she said. Rachel nodded slowly. Behind them, a car passed too slowly. A window rolled down. A middle finger rose, then vanished. Neither of them looked back. They just kept walking. The courtroom was cold. Not the kind of cold that came from bad insulation, but the deliberate, clinical chill designed to keep people uncomfortable, alert, on edge, easy to read. Cindy sat at the plaintiff's table beside her mother, fingers trembling slightly under the weight of everything. She didn't belong here, not by age, not by choice. But after what happened, she realized no one ever really belonged here until someone forced them to. Danielle looked calm, composed. Her navy blazer pressed sharp at the shoulders, her documents organized in rows before her like ammunition. But her eyes never stopped scanning. Every movement, every breath from the defense table across the aisle. She wasn't just watching, she was reading them, mapping their strategy in real time. At the defense table sat the attorney for the city, one for the police department, and another, stiffer, smugger, for Eastgate Industrial Corporation. Charles Whitman, the plant's CEO, sat behind them in a tailored suit, chewing mints with the same rhythm you'd expect from someone who couldn't stand waiting for peasants to finish their noise. He didn't even glance at Cindy. She noticed. Judge Evelyn Sharp entered briskly. Older, no nonsense. She didn't smile. Danielle had hoped for her. Sharp had a reputation for making bad men sweat. "Let's begin," the judge said without ceremony. The opening statements came and went. The city's lawyer called the incident unfortunate. The plant's lawyer called it an error in chemical labeling. And the police attorney referred to Officer Dean as a decorated professional caught in a moment of misinterpretation. Danielle called it what it was: assault, corruption, and systemic rot. Her voice never rose. It didn't have to. The defendants will ask you to believe this was a one-off, a mistake, a misunderstanding, but I ask you to look deeper. Look at the timeline. Look at the reports never filed, the records mysteriously redacted, the injuries minimized, the promotions handed out like hush money. My client is not an outlier. She is the result. The first deposition came from a plant manager, middle-aged, nervous, wore a cheap suit, and carried a binder that shook in his hands. Danielle was relentless but polite. You stated in your report that the solution used by Officer Dean was not known to be harmful when diluted. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. But the chemical registry submitted to OSHA last year classifies it as corrosive in concentrated form, correct? Yes, but... No, but... That's what the registry says? Yes. And was Officer Dean given concentrated or diluted solution? The man paused. We don't track that. So you don't know. Then how can you testify it was safe? Silence. The courtroom didn't gasp. It just went quiet enough to feel like it might. Outside the courthouse, reporters were starting to show up. Independent at first, then regional outlets. A local podcast replayed Danielle's opening statement, verbatim. Rachel reposted the clip with a caption, "This isn't just about Cindy. It never was." The next deposition was from an internal affairs officer. He was older, white-haired, his badge gleaming like a shield between him and consequence. Danielle moved slower this time. She let him feel the room. You received 3 formal complaints about Officer Dean in the last 4 years, correct? They were investigated and closed. Were they sustained? No. But one complainant had burns similar to my client's. She submitted photographs. Did you receive them? Yes. And did you verify her medical records? We didn't have access. Did you request access? No. Danielle leaned forward. So you closed the case without reviewing the evidence? His mouth opened, but no sound came. The courtroom still didn't gasp, but this time someone muttered, "Damn." Danielle kept going. Not with fire, but with precision. She wasn't here to stir emotion. She was here to corner the truth. Cindy watched her mother tear down men who thought silence would keep them safe. She didn't feel proud. She felt haunted. Because none of it would matter if the jury didn't care. And Eastgate had never been kind to girls who looked like her. During recess, they sat on a bench near the vending machines. Cindy didn't eat. Danielle sipped coffee, but didn't taste it. "I don't want to testify," Cindy said quietly. Danielle didn't answer right away. "You don't have to," she said finally. "We have enough. But if you do, it'll make them see you." "I don't want them to see me like that." "Then we won't do it." But Cindy wasn't sure. Because she didn't want them to see her. And she didn't want them to ignore her. And both options felt like different versions of losing. That night, they went home to find their porch graffitied again. This time it said, "Fraud." Danielle took a photo, filed a report, and went inside without a word. Cindy stood outside a little longer. She didn't cry. She just stared at the word and whispered, "Not this time." The next morning, she wore a plain black sweater and jeans to the courthouse, her hair pulled back tight, her face unreadable. Danielle didn't push her. Inside, Judge Sharp reviewed the day's docket. Danielle filed a motion to compel discovery from Eastgate Industrial. Emails, memos, safety protocol drafts, anything linking them to the police department's purchase of the chemical. Whitman's lawyers objected. "Fishing expedition," one said. Danielle just replied, "We already caught the fish. We're tracing the net." The judge granted partial discovery. It was a win, a small one, but it cracked the door. And then, before the afternoon adjourned, Cindy stood up. "I want to testify," she said. The courtroom went still. The judge glanced at Danielle, who gave a subtle nod. Cindy was sworn in. She sat in the witness box, knees tight together, voice quiet but clear. "Mandela told me it was routine," she began. "He pulled up like it was a joke, like hurting me was something normal. My mother stood between us and he did it anyway, like we didn't matter." She paused. "Sprayed me with something. It burned through my jacket, my skin. I screamed, but nobody came. The whole block saw it, but nobody came." She looked at the jury. "They don't want you to see me. Not really. They want you to see a headline, a protest, a lawsuit. But I'm not any of those things. I'm just a girl who got hurt and had to become something else to get someone to care." The silence that followed wasn't stillness. It was a reckoning. When she stepped down, she didn't look at Officer Dean. She didn't need to. Danielle closed the folder in front of her. Her hand brushed Cindy's as she sat back down. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. Cindy nodded once. "I did." Outside, the air smelled like Eastgate always did. Like something burning, something old, something that refused to die. But Cindy felt something different. Not hope. Dealing something hard. The threats became bolder after Cindy testified. Not anonymous notes anymore. Now it was direct messages with names attached. Comments under Rachel's posts flooded with snake emojis, racial slurs, and hashtags calling Danielle a liar. Cindy opened her school email and found doctored photos of herself. Her bandaged arm photoshopped to look like red paint. She clicked away without flinching. But the damage wasn't just digital. The following morning, Rachel's locker was broken into. Everything inside dumped in the hallway, shredded, soaked in something that smelled like bleach. Nobody claimed to see it happen. But everyone saw the janitor mutter, "Again," as he swept it up. Danielle reported it. No one followed up. The courtroom felt tighter now. Tension hung over the seats like fog. Every rustle of paper felt too loud, every cough too sharp. Jury members glanced more often toward the gallery, where townsfolk sat stone-faced, some supportive, others silently hostile. Danielle wasn't shaken, but she was calculating. She knew when power began to feel cornered, it lashed out. She'd seen it before. The day began with a motion from the defense to dismiss the lawsuit entirely. Insufficient evidence to support a claim of intentional harm or institutional negligence, they said. The plant's attorney leaned back in his seat like the whole case was an inconvenience. The police department's lawyer sipped coffee. Dean wasn't present, citing stress health concerns. Danielle stood. "We're not just proving what they did to Cindy. We're proving what they've always done. The patterns, the silence, the shield of procedure wrapped around violence. The evidence is clear. They didn't just fail to protect my daughter. They engineered the system that hurt her." The judge looked at the defense. Motion denied. A quiet murmur swept the gallery. The case moved forward. But outside, things unraveled. Cindy and Danielle returned home that night to find their living room window smashed. A brick lay on the floor, surrounded by glass, wrapped in duct tape. No note this time. Just silence, broken by the wind curling through the broken pane. Danielle called it in. The dispatcher said someone would come by. No one did. They taped up the window and sat on the couch in the dark, lit by one flickering lamp. "You think they'll do more?" Cindy asked. "They're running out of ways to hide," Danielle replied. "So now they're trying to scare us quiet." Cindy turned to her mother. "Are we losing?" Danielle didn't answer right away. "I think they want us to think we are. But fear isn't victory, it's desperation." The next morning, the key witness Danielle had fought for finally took the stand. A former plant technician named Marcus Bell, fired quietly 4 years ago, paid off, NDA signed. But the documents Danielle subpoenaed proved that payment had conditions tied directly to the same chemical Dean used on Cindy. Marcus took the stand with a slight limp and a nervous twitch in his jaw. He clutched the mic like it might float away. Danielle approached slowly. "Mr. Bell, can you tell the court what you told us during your pre-trial deposition?" He nodded, swallowed hard. "The chemical Dean used, it's not street legal for field use. It was repurposed industrial runoff. It's a cost-cutting tactic the plant safety committee approved. They sold it cheap to the city for testing kits. We called it Cleaner 19. But in concentrated form, that stuff burns through aluminum. Did you warn anyone?" "I tried. I filed a report with my supervisor." "And what happened?" "Them people said I misunderstood the inventory sheet. Then 2 weeks later, I was laid off." Danielle nodded. Let the silence settle. No further questions. The defense attorney stood but didn't ask much, just cast doubt. "Do you have evidence the chemical Officer Dean used came from your facility?" Marcus didn't blink. Check the batch number. It was mine. That night, the story cracked open online. A journalist from a mid-size investigative outlet broke it wide. Industrial plants supplied chemical used in police assault. The article ran long, filled with data Danielle had slipped to them behind the scenes. It included images of internal memos, a whistleblower interview with Marcus, and chemical records that matched batch codes logged by Eastgate PD. The article spread fast. Hashtags multiplied. TikToks exploded. With edits of Cindy's testimony, Marcus's voice shaking on the stand, Danielle's calm defiance in court. But then Rachel disappeared. She didn't come to school, didn't answer messages. Her last post was a selfie with the caption, "If I go quiet, it's not by choice." Cindy panicked. She begged Danielle to call the police. Danielle hesitated. "They won't help." "Then what do we do?" They found her 12 hours later, hiding at her cousin's. Someone had followed her home from the grocery store, screamed slurs at her, tried to grab her phone. She ran. Her parents told her to stay hidden until things died down. "They're turning this town into a war zone," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "And I'm not even the one they're aiming at." Cindy hugged her, tight, silent, furious. At court the next morning, the gallery was half empty. Fear had settled like dust. But Danielle walked in taller than ever. That day she called one last surprise witness. A nurse. Not from Eastgate, from a private clinic 3 towns over. She'd treated a teenage boy, 3 years ago, who'd shown up with chemical burns nearly identical to Cindy's. His mother said it was from a school search gone wrong. The nurse filed a report. Nothing happened. But she kept the records. She kept the photos. She handed them to Danielle on the stand, as the judge allowed it into evidence. The jury saw the photos side by side. Cindy, a boy, same injuries, same pattern. Danielle's voice didn't waver. How many children have to be burned before someone calls it policy? The defense scrambled to object. The judge overruled. When the court adjourned for the day, Danielle leaned over to Cindy. "We're close," she whispered. "Close to what?" "Truth. And once it's out, it's theirs to carry." Cindy stepped outside into the courthouse parking lot and looked up at the clouded sky. The same gray haze hung over Eastgate, but something felt different, not clearer, just closer to breaking. She opened her phone and saw a new headline. Federal Civil Rights Division opens inquiry into Eastgate PD. And below it, a subheadline, Congresswoman requests public oversight on industrial partnership. Cindy looked at her mom. Danielle looked tired, older, but in her eyes there was something Cindy hadn't seen in a while. Relief. And beneath that, fire. As they walked to the car, a woman in a hoodie approached. No phone, no mic, just a folded piece of paper. "I used to work dispatch," she said. "I can't testify, but I heard everything. You're not wrong." She handed Danielle the paper. It was a list. Names, dates, call logs, codes. Danielle nodded. "Thank you." The woman nodded and vanished down the block. Inside the car, Cindy looked at the list. Her name wasn't the only one circled. Danielle put the key in the ignition, her hand steady. "This ends soon," she said. Cindy looked at her scar, then out the window. "It starts again after that, doesn't it?" Danielle didn't answer. The final day of court didn't feel like an ending. Not at first. Cindy woke up before the sun rose, her stomach a tangled knot of nerves. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of wood settling. Danielle was already at the kitchen table, dressed in the same navy blazer she'd worn on day one. Her hands moved slowly across a stack of closing arguments. There was no rush, no panic, just the stillness of a woman who knew what she carried could shift the weight of a town. Cindy poured herself coffee and sat across from her. "You ready?" Danielle asked. "No," Cindy said honestly. "But I'll go anyway." They didn't talk much after that. There was nothing left to say. The courthouse steps were lined with people this time. Some held signs. Others wore shirts that read, "We believe Cindy," and "Justice is a mother's voice." The press clustered to the side, flashing photos as Danielle and Cindy passed through security and entered the courtroom for the last time. Inside, the jury looked tired. So did the judge. So did the defense. But Danielle? She looked the same as she did on the first day, controlled, unshaken, focused. The judge cleared her throat. "We'll hear closing statements." The city's attorney went first, giving a dry, practiced speech about procedure, intention, and the complexity of law enforcement. The plant's lawyer followed, painting their involvement as a tragic miscommunication. The police attorney tried to cast doubt, referencing Cindy's emotional instability and calling the entire event regrettable but not malicious. Then Danielle rose. She didn't walk to the podium right away. She stood at the plaintiff's table, eyes scanning the jury, letting the silence settle. Then she spoke. "The child is hurt. The world should stop. We all agree on that, in theory. But what happens when it doesn't? When the world keeps moving, and the people who hurt her laugh behind closed doors, write reports that erase what happened, and call her a liar just because she dared to survive?" She stepped closer. "My daughter was burned by a chemical approved for use through a secret partnership between a police department and a corporation trying to save a buck. And when I tried to ask why, the answer wasn't silence. It was punishment. We've been harassed, threatened, called everything but human, and yet we're still here." She pointed gently towards Cindy. "You've heard the evidence, you've seen the records, you've met the people they tried to erase. Now the question isn't whether you believe us. The question is, what kind of place does Eastgate get to be after this?" She paused, then she nodded and sat back down. The judge gave final instructions. The jury was dismissed. And then the waiting began. Cindy stared at the courtroom walls, trying not to count the minutes. Rachel sat behind her, holding her hand. Her father, who'd flown in from another state for the verdict, placed a steady hand on Danielle's shoulder. The reporters whispered among themselves. The defense lawyers paced. After 4 hours, the clerk returned, feeling, "We have a verdict." Everyone stood. The judge called the court to order. The foreman stood, holding a slip of paper. His voice shook slightly. "In the matter of McKinney versus the city of Eastgate, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff." Cindy's breath caught. "In the matter of McKinney versus the Eastgate Police Department, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff." A few gasps rippled through the crowd. "In the matter of McKinney versus Eastgate Industrial Corporation, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff." The room froze. Then applause burst out, scattered and shocked. The judge pounded her gavel. "Order. I will have order in this courtroom." But the wave was already crashing. Cindy looked at Danielle, who remained still, hands folded. One tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't move to wipe it. The judge announced damages, millions in civil restitution, a mandate for the police department to revise its chemical handling policies, and an order that Eastgate Industrial's contracts with the city be terminated and investigated further. Eastgate. After court adjourned, the hallway filled with reporters, but Danielle raised one hand. "No questions today," she said. "Today, we rest." Outside, people surrounded Cindy and Rachel. Teachers, neighbors, even strangers hugged them, wept, and whispered, "Thank you." Across the street, someone played music from a car. Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On?" It drifted through the summer air like a benediction. They drove home in silence. No police cruisers tailed them. No bricks through the window. Just Eastgate as it had always been. Cracked, uneven, haunted. But something was different now. The next day, the mayor announced his resignation. Officer Dean was officially terminated pending federal prosecution. Charles Whitman stepped down from his position as CEO of Eastgate Industrial. The EPA launched an environmental probe into the plant's chemical disposal records, and a civil rights oversight board made up of Eastgate residents was formed, with Rachel Monroe as one of its founding members. Cindy sat on the porch that evening, a light breeze brushing against her arms. Her scar itched, but she didn't scratch. Danielle joined her, sipping from a mug, her expression soft. "You did it," Cindy said. "No," Danielle replied. "We did." They watched the sun set behind the crooked rooftops of Eastgate, golden light bleeding through the haze. For the first time in years, it felt like maybe, just maybe, the air smelled a little cleaner. A car rolled slowly past. The driver nodded in quiet respect. No fear, no mockery. Danielle turned to Cindy. "You still want to be a scientist?" Cindy smiled faintly. "Yeah," she said, "but now I think I want to build things, things that last, things that help people." Danielle grinned. "Just don't build them in Eastgate." They both laughed. Inside, her acceptance letter to Morgan State University sat unopened on the table. Cindy hadn't dared read it yet. Now she stood up, walked inside, and tore it open. She read it once, then again, and let out a scream so loud and joyful it echoed down the block. Danielle rushed in. "You got in?" Cindy nodded, tears running freely. "Full ride." Danielle pulled her into a hug. "You earned it." That night, the porch lights of Eastgate flickered on, one by one. Not as warnings, but as beacons. And in a house with a cracked foundation and a new window pane, two black women sat together, unbroken, unstoppable, and finally, free.